Hey, welcome to this week's The Bent, Twisted, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Show with the dancing, at least half a dancer. I'm Jeff Harrison, along with the dancing, and there looks like there's a tail wagging in the background.
Leslie Spoor, and that's Maze, but you can only see her tail.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
Amazing. Very good one this morning, Jeff.
Hey, Leslie, I know we both have some remodeling going on, so in case you hear any noise in the background, it could be that. I think we're okay today. I think you said you had your stuff all handled and you got a little break. My guys are off for today, but they have keys. Who knows where it's going to walk in? But we've got a great show lined up for you today. This is the Bent, Twisted, and Exhausted Entrepreneurial Podcast for.
Sorry.
That's a handout for you.
Entrepreneur success, right?
Okay.
And strategies and success for
small
business owners. I thought we were the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted. Why do you keep getting bent for? Oh, she brought in a bottle. Excuse
Wonderful.
me. Mace, out with the bottle.
So anyway, the name of the show is the Bent, Twisted, and Exhausted Entrepreneurial Podcast. It's been like that since day one. And that's why I put it on the screen. So I was the one who would actually put it out. Because at one point I thought it was tired, confused, and worn out, which, hey, we all have those days, but it is this. So anyway, let's get into it because this is ridiculous. And, let's face it, this is sometimes what happens when you're an entrepreneur. But today we have a cool topic. And the topic is, hey, are you building a business or are you just creating a job for yourself? Leslie, have you ever met anybody that does either one of the others? And quite frankly, what have you done for yourself and what's the difference?
Well, both actually. So my husband was a tile guy for like 40 years and 30 of those years he had his own business and he was what we called a one bucket guy, right?
What does that mean?
That means he didn't have employees. He was just a solopreneur. He built a job for himself, basically. And he made a decision early on that he didn't want employees because he wanted to be able to work hard and then go play hard. And he didn't want the responsibility and literally the headache quite often of having to be responsible for other people. Me, on the other hand, when I went and started my company in Executive Errands in 2006, I decided from the get-go I was building a company. So I hired somebody as soon as I got one client, which is usually not the way people do things, but that's how I did it. And I have actually built a company over the last 20 years. And so there's positives and negatives with both. Both are good. Both options are excellent because you have the autonomy in both scenarios to make your own way and follow your own path. But you definitely need to consider different things for different options. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, let's talk about, first of all, the realities. If you're building a job for yourself, which again, as we said, it's not bad, it is a choice. But right. Here's some things that I've run across in my, 60 plus years on the planet of people who say, yeah, I work for myself, but then they complain about things that they have to do, but they are, as you say, they're a one bucket show, right? And some of that stuff is like, when you talk to most small business owners who the average is 2 to 3 employees, and it's usually run by a husband or wife. So in other words, it really is, hey, you're wearing a lot of hats. So you're the sales, you're the marketing, you're the accounting, you're the HR, your payroll,
customer service.
Yeah. And so when you take on that job, like with your husband, he had to answer all the phone calls from all the customers. There was no shield in between him and his end user. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, he had to, and there's so many. Like I said, there's a lot of positives, and I don't want to get ahead of myself on what some of they are because we're going to talk about that. And there's also drawbacks, and so you really need to, when you're trying to decide to start a business, or even if you've been in business for a long time, there's no reason not to change direction. You can always change direction on what you're doing, but you still want to give this consideration so that you know what you're doing. Because if you can't just start a business and look at 6 months from now, you really need to look at 5 years from now and say, okay, where do I want to take this? What do I want to do? What do I want to be when I grow up? So that you have a path to follow. And again, that path can change, and it always does, but you need to start out with something. You just can't, throw a shingle out and think that you're going to be successful.
Well, sometimes this often happens, and I'll use my wife as an example. She's an amazing cook, and she's trained as a chef, but she does home cooking, and she loves what she does. She really is spectacular. And so we'll have somebody come over and they'll have dinner and they say, "Oh my gosh, you should open up a restaurant." She would never want to do that because she enjoys the cooking. Now, what would happen is sometimes people think, "Oh, I'm really good." And I'll give you another example. Another dear friend of ours, she is a magnificent dessert, what are we thinking, a pastry chef. And she has done that a little bit on the business, but she's like your one bucket person. And there are times where she just hates it, and she can't look at another macaroon because she has to make so many for these restaurants. So those are some of the realities of what you have to do, is say, hey, like you said, it could shift. And,
right.
At that point you say, well, like she said, I can't take on any more, our pastry chef. I can't take on any more because I'm the one doing all the work. So
Right.
how do people make that shift, Leslie? And you kind of alluded to at the beginning. You said, hey, I just hired somebody. But how do we start making that shift from saying, wait a second, I am the glue that holds this whole thing together. If I step out, there is no business. How do we move from that to, okay, let's transition in thinking, well, maybe I want to make a business of this.
Well, I think before we get to, I don't mean to step on your toes, but
I gave her a hand. That's why we don't run relays. I hand her the baton. She drops it, actually throws it back at me.
So, yeah. Well, I think it's important to talk about the pros and cons of both options first. I don't want to just say, okay, well, if you're a small business owner and you feel overwhelmed, you want to transition to being a company, because there are things you can do as a small business owner while you're a solopreneur that can make your life better without becoming a full-fledged company. And when I say company, I mean having employees and workers' comp and all that stuff that you have to do when you're when you own a company. So let's talk about that for just a minute, and then we'll come back to that, because I have a perfect example of how you do that. So what's the benefit of being a solopreneur, right? You get to make your own hours, right? You get to, nobody tells you what to do, right? You can pick and choose what jobs to take, which these are all still true for a business, but I think you get a little bit more strength in this when it's just you. You don't have to worry about bringing in work for somebody else so they can feed their family. What else is a benefit to it? You could take time off when you want to, right? What else would you say is a benefit to just being a solo? You don't have the costs associated with so much with taxes, paying employment taxes, payroll. You don't have you don't have to carry as much insurance when you're a solopreneur. So your costs are less, your overhead is less. What else would you say is a benefit?
I'd say a benefit is you don't have to answer to anyone.
Right.
Yes, you have to answer to your customers, but at the end of the day, like as an example, say, you know what, I want to change to orange pens. I don't have to talk to anybody about that. I don't have to call Leslie and say, Leslie, I'm thinking about orange. She says, I don't really like orange. And now there's this negotiation, and we've settled on purple because it's somewhere between the two colors we like. No, it's like, I'm going to go to purple, or I'm going to go to orange. That's just the way it is. So I think that's a very powerful thing of saying,
right.
I don't have to answer to anyone. And some
right.
people are best when that's the case.
Right. So what's the drawbacks then? The drawbacks are you're limited in how much revenue you can make based on your own ability to do the service or work the business, or depending on whatever it is that you're selling, widgets. You're limited in what you're physically capable of doing, right? You can only grow to a certain size if it's just you, because it's just you.
It's like having a 5-gallon bucket. You can only put 5 gallons of water in there, and anything else is spilling over.
Exactly.
That's all you've got. That's your capacity.
Right. And then you also can't, you can still be selective on who you work for or don't, but if it's a long time between potential clients, that you might be forced to take on more work that you don't want to. It's difficult to respond in a timely manner when it's only you and you're doing the work and trying to take the calls and then find time to do finance. And so you may often find yourself working at night a lot more than you want to. I try to explain to people that your income is diluted by the number of hours you work, right?
Explain that.
So if you're charging $50 an hour, I don't think anybody charges that, but if you're charging $50 an hour and you're working 40 hours a week, technically you're making, that's $200 a week, right? Or 2,000. Sorry, my zeros. I need an extra zero. But if you're working 80 hours a week, that's technically only $1,000 a week, right?
You're saying if I still get paid 40 hours, I'm only getting paid for 40 hours, but I worked 80 hours to accomplish that 40 hours worth of work?
Exactly. So the other 40 hours are spent on marketing, networking, finance, things that you have to do outside of the time that you're working. So your income is directly affected by how many hands you have. Basically, I think that's the easiest way to say it, right? So there are benefits and drawbacks to that. As a business owner, now you're responsible. Now I say business owner, not solopreneur, but actually have employees or subcontract assistants. You have people you're responsible for, right? You have to sell work in order to keep them occupied. But you also have the opportunity to bring in additional help, subcontract or delegate work to experts in different aspects. Like you could hire a bookkeeper, or you could hire somebody to do your blogs or your web information, or you have all these. You don't have to have all the skills. You just have to make enough money to afford all the skills, right? And the one thing that people often forget is that your business, the less you work on your business, and I say on it, the less you work in your business, the more valuable it is, right?
Yes.
Now, so speaking of that, if you're a solo person and you're doing all the work yourself, when you stop, what value is there? How do you retire from that? There's nothing. Yeah. My kid's dad, he worked on bandsaw blades and sold seasonings to all the Stater brothers up and down the coast of California. When he passed away, the business just went away. Nope, it wasn't worth anything to anybody because he did all of the work. So his competitor just went in and took all the accounts, right? Because he was the business. But if you build a business, if you build a company with people and stuff, you can build assets and you can build value, and you can then create an exit strategy to have money at the end. You can sell the business, you can give it to one of your kids to continue. You could bring in partners. There's all different options. So again, benefit and drawbacks. You want to think about that. Now, that doesn't say that you can't, as a solopreneur, plan ahead, create, 401k, not for IRA accounts and Roth IRAs and all that stuff that you can plan for your future by saving for it, right? Which is what I would do if I was a solopreneur. But some people don't think that far ahead. They just think, I'm going to go work and do the job. And then all of a sudden they get sick, something happens, they get tired of doing it. And now there's no value and they can't get anything. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a bit like, let's take your husband for a second. If he's not laying tile, he's not making money.
Right.
You, on the other hand, could be on a trip to Africa and your company is still making money. Right? So there's a huge benefit there. Now, the good news is your husband got to go with you, so he still made money. But the point, and that used to bother my wife. We went to a seminar many, many years ago, and she's been a hairstylist owner and had her own salon for some time, but it's a one shop, like one person. She's in there by herself. And they were explaining this. I have a business. She has a job. that sounds like a business, right?
Mhm.
And they just made it very clear. They said a business will make money when you're not there, and a job requires you to be doing the work. And the moment you stop cutting hair, what happens to your income? She says,
Stops.
no pun intended, it's cut off.
Right, exactly.
And so just recently, and this is just, I'm talking in the last 48 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where she's starting to kind of see this idea of possibly now putting a second or third chair in her salon because there's room, and then renting those out. Now, it's not going to become this massive income, but what it does, it actually pays for the rent and then makes her, a couple $1,000 a month if she didn't have to cut any hair. But she looks at it and
Right.
says, well, maybe I go from 4 days to 3 days. So there is a transition place, but it's taken her 40 years to get there.
For how long?
40, 40.
40. 40.
Yeah, because she's always loved that freedom of, hey, you know what? I have my book. I lock the doors. I go to Cabo or wherever she goes to Thailand for yoga, and it's okay. Or when she comes back, she just picks up and keeps going. She doesn't have to worry about employees. And I always say, well, let me ask you, what if you had a lot of employees like you? Would you be hard to manage? She says, well, no, but there's not many people like me. I said, you got to give it a chance. Right.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
and so I like the idea of, hey, your money stops when you stop working. If you have a job or in a business, it does not.
That's correct. And so that's something you have to consider. Now that's fine for some people. I know a lady that owns a spa. It's a small boutique spa. And she doesn't really make a lot of money, and she doesn't really she doesn't lose any money. She doesn't make a lot of money, but she doesn't have to work. So she gets frustrated and expresses to her husband that she's frustrated because she's not making money hand over fist in this spa. On the other hand, she loves it. She likes going there every day and the conversation with people and the interaction with people. And when she wants to go away to Cabo or whatever, she can just go and just puts a note that says, by appointment only or whatever. And so, her husband keeps telling her, but you don't have to work. You're just doing this kind of for fun. And that's okay too. It's just pin money. That's what we call pin money, that you just have a little extra money in your pocket if you want to go to Home Goods or go somewhere and have a cocktail or do whatever. It's just a little of your own personal money. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think some people get hung up in, how do I'm not successful if I'm not running a huge corporation. And that's not true. Success is dependent on, I've talked about this in my educational series, remember, about what is success to you? What tells you? Right. To me, success is that I can walk away and things still operate properly. And that also creates value for a future exit strategy. Whereas if things fall apart when you're not there, then it isn't built right. At least it's not my opinion. And because it should always, money is secondary, I think, to the fact of how well your business runs, what reputation you have, how your clients see you, what perception of value do you have. I think the money comes secondary to that. If you focus on those other things, then the money comes.
I agree. We see that all the time. Dan was that way. Your husband, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it, but your husband's that way. And my contractor's that way. Is like, it becomes one of those things like he was mentioning in our meeting the other day, that one person has given him 17 leads. Well, that would never happen if he didn't do what you just said. He did the work and the money came, the referrals came because he did a great job. And, now there's an example where, he had a business, thought he would create a little job on the side. It grew again. And now he's moved himself from being the person doing the work. And now he's a supervisor. Like, he came by my house for just a few minutes today, but there's he has a crew at a job just down the street. So everything continued to work. I'm curious about this whole idea about the job, because as we talk about this, I think about your husband and my wife is they can lock it up and walk away and not, like, there's nothing for them to worry about. Like, when the day ends, they turn it off.
I know.
when your day ends or my day ends, do we think about, oh, it's done, I'm not taking any phone calls?
No, we're bent, twisted, and exhausted most of the time. It's crazy. I mean, and I'm better at it. I will say, in the where I live, I have a home office like you do. I have a home office. We also have an office outside in another building where my employees and stuff go. But I was still working out of my home office 5 years ago, for example. And when I made this, as you can see it behind me, I have a built-in credenza and all. This is in a home office, and I actually had a sign made for the door, and I put my company name on the door, right? And psychologically, for me, I know it looks like a vanity thing, but it's not. It really that told me that when I walk out of here, this is work, and that's not the rest of the house is not work. So I can literally shut the door if I want to and turn the business off. Now, does it completely turn off in my brain? Never. It just doesn't, because that's the kind of person I am. But you have to be able to get away from it sometimes. And I'm not sure which one it's worse for. I don't know whether it's worse for somebody who's responsible to do everything, or somebody like me who's got employees that help. I don't know. I think part of that's your personality. I don't know. What do you consider yourself? Because you, to me, in my head, you're more of a solopreneur, but I know you have a lot of help, but it's a different kind of help. It's more virtual help. So I don't know how do you classify your business?
Yeah, I would say I'm a business owner who is just active, but I don't like, as an example, I was asked by a client 2 days ago when we were filming. He said, "Well, now do you do all your own editing?" I said, "No." I said, 95% of it is done by my staff. I said, "I'm doing this one because it's a rare, it's kind of a short time frame and I can turn it around for us. But for the most part, most of the work is done by my staff." I would say I'm still that front facing with the customers, and I'm also the sales staff. So I still have some roles there. So if I were to say, if I really wanted to totally remove myself, I would probably hire somebody to be that tweener. Like, as an example, Melissa, I would probably say, "Melissa, I want you to be the person that interfaces with all the clients. I don't want to talk to them directly anymore." And then I would probably hire a salesperson who their job is 100% dedicated to going out and getting new business or taking calls or whatever that might be, dealing with leads. That would remove me from that and put me in a position where I'm 100% visionary. And yet that may not be 100% of what I want, because I enjoy being with the clients. So I guess solopreneur, because we have I think in total, we have about 17 people that work with and for Swing Point Media. And as you say, they're worldwide. But I don't do the work. Like, it's getting done when I'm not, like, Melissa's doing blogs and videos and making sure it's getting posted and social media stuff and,
Right.
doing all that stuff. So it is a bit of a hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah. And what's interesting is I'm thinking, as you're talking about that I have both kinds of companies, right? So Executive Errands, the lifestyle management company, I have like 5 or 6 employees, and I don't even know how many people work for me. I have several people who work for me, and we have written policies and procedures for everything. So everybody operates the same. And this all came out of when we got married, when Dan and I got married 5 years ago. Remember, I had to work on my honeymoon, and I had the laptop with me, I had my phone with me. I was constantly having to stop what we were doing to go back to the hotel to work on stuff. And I realized I was doing something wrong. And so over the last 5 years, I have completely revamped all of that, so that now the company runs without me. I mean, literally, people say to me, "How many hours a week do you work?" And I'm struggled to say 2. It's like, I don't, unless I'm doing big proposals for something or writing newsletters, I really don't have that much to do. On the other hand, Concierge Business Solutions, which is the software and consulting company, that's only me. I don't have any employees for that, unless you want to count Lindsay, my office manager for Executive Errands, who sometimes helps me over there. But as a rule, that's just me. Now, the difference between me as a solopreneur and me as a business, a regular corporate business owner, is that everything I do for CBS, I try to make it standalone. So it doesn't need me involved. The software, if I demo it, I'll do the demo, but then once I get somebody trained on using it, when they license it and I train them up, they're on their own, they're good, and they can come to me when they have questions, but I'm not involved in their day-to-day, right?
Gotcha.
If it's any of the educational documentation or webinars or booklets or anything like that that we market over there, they're all done. You call it sunk cost, right? The effort and cost of it is finished, and now it's just a matter of selling what we have and then answering questions and doing stuff like that. So I kind of have the best of both worlds, really. And I can walk away from both companies without any repercussions. So just realized that's pretty cool, actually. I didn't.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious. Did the evolution of one cause the growth in the other? Like the awareness of, hey, this isn't working, because I'm working on my honeymoon and I've got my laptop out and I'm in the closet doing calls and during your honeymoon, and you realize, hey, that's not working. So you had to revamp that, and then that created that space for CBS to expand that. Yeah.
Right. That's true, because I had all these ideas for years for CBS and couldn't work on them because I was so wrapped up in working in executive errands as opposed to on executive errands. And those two prepositions are key. Am I working in my business or am I working on my business? And I would challenge any of you that are listening to ask yourself that question. Do you work in the business or do you work on it?
Well, help us understand those two prepositions, in and on.
Okay, so in means you're the guy wearing, or the person wearing all the hats, actually physically doing the work, having to answer the phone and do everything at once. I'm in the business doing the work.
Gotcha.
On your business means you're just limited mostly to networking, marketing, writing newsletters, creating content. Those are things you're working on in order to further your business, to further and to achieve the goals you set out for your business. Those are two different things. And it's really difficult and it's not difficult, but it's super challenging to work in the business and on it at the same time. Right? Would you agree with that? Because
100%.
I don't see how you do both. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's where I think, and I've been really good at it at times, and I've just straight up, I've sucked at it at times, of saying, okay, I'm going to put what I need to do in and on. I'm going to put it on my calendar. And that is one of those things like, okay, from 10 to 11, I'm going to do this. I'll give you what we're doing right now is working on our business.
That's right.
We're not working in our business. We're working on our business.
Right.
This is a choice to say, okay, what does this do? Well, it could expand our brands. It could introduce us to people that we didn't know that we could collaborate with, that we could grow our business or do something, with our skill sets to do something that's on the business. But if as soon as I say, okay, now from, let's say 11 to 12, I'm editing a video. I'm back at working in the business.
That's right. That's absolutely a perfect metaphor. Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, I get it now.
For example.
What we're talking about here, it sounds like I'm probably more of a hybrid. And when you talk about a business or a job, you have that ability to say with executive errands, that's truly a business, because you're never going out there and walking the house and, following the wall and, writing reports that's not you. You're not doing that anymore, right?
Right. No, I never did it. Honestly, I never did it. And except for when somebody was out sick. If somebody was out sick and we had limited resources, then I would do the work. And it is good to do the work so that you can see how it operates, so that you can make sure your procedures are good and that you're being efficient. Like we had made a lot after I went out. I think I had to be out for like 6 weeks when one of my employees went in to get a pacemaker. And I realized that several of our reports in our system were inadequate. For example, just as a brief example, we get a list of all the homes that we need to go check each week, and they weren't sorted by community. So when you were trying to plan your time, you're sort of all over the place. where now I went back and changed the sort criteria. So now it sorts by community. So you can see all the homes in one specific area that you need to do at once, and you can plan to be more efficient. Little things like that you may not realize when you're not doing the work helps to, so it's like the undercover boss, it's like
Yeah.
go and do it for a minute and find out what's really going on. But again, I never set out to build a job for myself. I specifically knew I wanted to build a company. And in my mind, because we sell time, and time is smoke and mirrors, right? It's vapor. I mean, time is really hard to quantify. So I knew that I need to have a structure in place that the client, how do I want to say this? The worst thing you can hear in my business is you're like family to me.
Mm.
Okay. And that's because then they want favors. They don't want you to charge them for everything you're doing. So in order to avoid that situation, hiring somebody created that hierarchy that said that person has to be paid. They're assigned to work to do the support for you. So therefore I have to bill for their time. Right. So I have never had really, I don't think I've had any complaints about how much we charge for time or how much time we spend doing something, because we're really, really good. And this is a whole other topic, but we're really good about documenting what we did, why we did it, and how we did it, so that we have that transparency, so the client gets the value out of it. But these are things that you have to think about, even either way, solopreneur, big business owner, I'm going to say just corporate business owner. You have to think about perception of value. How do you create that customer service level? Everything's about from the client perspective. And so for you give them a finished product, you give them content, you give them video, you give them blogs and newsletters and stuff. You give them something tangible. I'm like using a gas credit card, right? At the end of the month, what do you have for it? Nothing. You've used it all up. Right. I was like, I don't use gas credit cards because I hate the idea of paying for something I don't have in, so, so it's kind of the same thing. You're using hours, and we're absolutely a valuable service to clients who can't be in two places at the same time or have a second home here or another part of the country. But you need to be able to assure them that they're getting true value for that. And because it's just air for them. They don't have anything tangible like you do. So it's a bit of a challenge, but it certainly can be done. Absolutely.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're talking about, hey, are you a business owner, or did you build a job for yourself? When you said, hey, I'm going to go to business, am I building a business, or I'm an operator, or I am building a job, and it's just me. I get to go to work every day, and it's that's the way you want to do. We're not saying one is better than the other. They're saying it's a choice, and just understand the positive and minuses of those. And also, now I want to bring that question up that I asked early on.
Right.
Okay, so somebody has been doing a job for a while, and because they've gotten so good, the demand is so high, they realize, wow, wait a second. If I had one more person, or if I didn't have to do everything myself, I could grow my business, and I'm open to that. How do people start making that transition, in your opinion?
Well, first, in my opinion, you would have to evaluate what kind of foundation you already have, right? Do you have a website? How is your brand built? Have you taken the time to brand what you're doing, even though it's just you, right? Because some people don't. They literally have a business card and they say, I make cookies, and, they start making cookies for people. So if you have a website, you have pricing, you also have to consider this. And this is one of the big things in the beginning is a lot of times people's self-worth is tied up in what they're going to charge for something. And so they feel like they can't charge a certain amount because who would pay that? That's what they think. Mm-hmm. Who would pay that? And if you're going to transition into being a business, a corporate type business, you will have to pay those people to help you. So your price point, whether it's for widgets or for services, has to support the cost of adding on employees, payroll, stronger marketing, better marketing collateral, digital marketing. I mean, you've got to make sure your price point will cover all these things you want to do. So I often counsel with people that are charging $35 an hour for what we do, for the type of work we do, but someplace else in the country. And so my first question is, who's your target client, right? Because you have to know who your client is. If you're going after fixed income seniors, in our situation, if you're going after fixed income seniors, you're limited on what you can charge, and you're going to have to make up in volume in order to make enough money to be financially secure. If you want to have fewer clients, people who understand the value of what you're doing and who are not going to quibble about what it costs, that the time is more valuable to them than the cost, then you have to charge a higher rate, which then allows you to hire people so that you can pay them and still make a profit, right? And I can't tell somebody what to charge because that would be considered price fixing. So I can only give my own examples and give them things to think about when it comes to consideration, fee setting considerations. I have a booklet about that that's on my website, fee setting considerations, so that you can figure out whether or not you can afford to hire people. Because often when you start out as yourself, you're not charging as high of a rate as you're going to have to charge in order to hire people, right? So unless you can go hire them from like somewhere where they only get $5 an hour or something. But if you're hiring local people, you have to pay them a fair and living wage. So I think that's probably one of the biggest transition things that can be quite overwhelming for people, that you're going to have to address what you're offering, how much you're charging for it, how do you sell that, right? You have to be comfortable in whatever you're selling. I'll tell you a story about that. So I forget what I used to charge. I used to charge X amount of dollars per hour, and I knew I needed to go up, but I was really nervous. This was way back when I first started. I didn't charge enough to begin with. And I had in my mind what I wanted to charge, but I wasn't confident in it. So you can't sell what you're not confident in. So one day I get to this new client, this potential new client, and I sat down and she said, well, how much is it, after we talked about everything? And I used the new number. She didn't bat an eyelash. She said, okay. And I went, oh my God, that was so easy. All I had to do, just tell them what it is. And so there's ways to do that, but you have to be confident in what you're offering, and you have to take into consideration what comes out of the number, right? Because these days everything's gotten so expensive. You have to, and you don't want to be raising your rates every 6 months or every year. You want to try to, I do them in pretty big chunks, so I don't have to do them again for a really long time. And we've been blessed that we don't lose a lot of clients when we do that, but they understand. I've had people stand up in board meetings at HOAs and say, this is what Executive Heiress does on my behalf, and that she doesn't charge enough for it. That's embarrassing. So you have to think about all these things.
I'll give you an example of when you don't figure in the cost of staffing. A very close friend of mine, he and another person went into business together, and they worked very, very hard. And at the end of the year, they had done 7 figures in business, but they'd made very, very little money themselves. In fact, if they would have been one of their freelancers, they would have made more money. And so they shut the business down. They separated. And so he warned me, he said, hey, just be very careful. Well, because I know you and you kind of already schooled me on this, I said, well, this is the profit margin I want to make on everything that I make. And that's above and beyond the cost of my staff. And that's worked out very, very well. So, here it is, the time of year, we're just getting our taxes done and whatnot. and it worked out really well. It wasn't
Okay.
outrageous. Yeah, it wasn't outrageous, but it was one of those things like, hey, if we're taking the risk of starting a business, whether it's an individual or it's a business instead of a job, you deserve that.
Right.
We deserve it because we took the risk, right?
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with being a W-2, but at the same time, is you have stepped out on your own. There is no parachute. There's no net,
That's
right?
true.
And so it's up to you. So there should be some higher returns. I think about people who are like in the restaurant business, and that's a very thin margin. 3 to 5% profit. I'm like, that's not even worth doing it, in
Right.
my
Exactly.
opinion.
That's how I feel too.
Right? That's not worth doing. And put your money in, treasuries or something, and sleep well at night. But that's another story. But so anyway, so what Leslie's saying is making sure you understand the cost associated with the hard costs associated with bringing that. And it may just be one person, like she said. Hey, when she got started, she hired one person. What is the cost associated with them? Because it's not just their hourly rate. It's all
No,
these other things that go along with it.
yeah, you call that the
Workman's
burden. Yeah, the burden of the company. So say you pay somebody $20 an hour, but burdened with taxes, insurance, payroll, all that stuff. It may be $40 an hour, really, right? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
rule of thumb we used to use when I worked in aerospace, that it was about $40 an hour. It's probably higher now, but you have to take that in consideration. So it's not the $20 an hour that you're paying them. It's how much burden is there, or how much overhead is there in the company. And for a while, my overhead was going down while my revenue was going up, which totally amazed my accountant. She was like just flabbergasted. No, whose overhead goes down and their income goes up. But if you're smart about it, you can do that. You just have to be smart, and you have to look at all kinds of things when you transition from solopreneur to corporatepreneur. I'm going to call it that way. I was going to say something about finances a minute ago, and I now have lost it, but it'll probably come back. I was going to say that money's not, I keep saying that money is not the sole purpose, right? It's not the most important thing. However, there's a really good book out. It's been out forever. I think we read it the first in the 80s. So it's been around a long time, and it's still valid. It's called The Goal. Have you read The Goal, Jeff?
I'm surprised I haven't. I've not heard of that.
It's called The Goal, and the goal of any business, solopreneur or otherwise, is to make money. That's the reason we go into business, is to make money.
That's it.
And along that line, to add to what you said earlier about it's not worth my time, or I've got to make it worth my time, is if you're going to be in business for yourself, you need to be creative in how many revenue streams. Was that you or me? Did you hear that?
It was probably here. Yep.
I heard a helicopter.
Construction.
Oh, sound
Big
like
truck.
a helicopter.
Big truck.
Okay. So the goal is to make money. So when you go to create a business, you got to think about what kind of revenue streams can I generate off of this, right? In your business with digital marketing, you could take one thing and turn it into a blog, and turn it into newsletter, and turn it into video, and turn it into, all these different things that you could take one piece and turn it into, which creates all new revenue streams or new opportunities for revenue. So you have to look at, yes, making money is the primary business we go into work. Nobody's that altruistic that they're working for nothing unless they work for a nonprofit. However, to me, it's not the most important thing. So money will come. It will always come if you do good in the universe and to your community and to your clients. If you help people, help them by making technology for them that they don't know how to do. Help them by giving them time that they don't have, that they need extra time. Helping them with a software or training material so they can learn how to do better. If you're helping them, the money comes automatically. I know it's a little philosophical, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Oh, you want me to respond to that? Okay. Well,
yeah.
I feel like we've.
Don't make me dance again.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered that whole idea. The difference between the big question when we first started out is, hey, are you going into doing what you're doing as a business or a job? And right. one is requiring you to work in the business or in that job to make it run. The other one will allow you to work on the business, and you'll see the differences. And there's nothing wrong with either choice. Some people,
Right.
as we've said, our spouses, they like the job. It is a business. They get the write-offs, and that they're technically a corporation. My wife is, and but at the same time, it is a solo job versus a corporation where we're working on the business like Leslie and I do in our businesses. And even as we said, she is probably I'm going to say a purist when it comes to executive areas. She is truly a business owner. And I'm kind of a hybrid of that because I still wear a few of the hats, not all of them. And I can get away with being gone for a while and it still operate. But there's probably two people in my business specifically that I could probably hire and move on, and then it would totally remove me from that, and I could play more pickleball. Who knows?
Well, I'm going to interrupt you for a second because
I felt
remember
that coming.
I know, you know me. I'm sorry. I apologize. I can't help myself. But you know how we were talking earlier about, well, say you get so much business, you want to transition into a real company. There is a middle ground on that too. Like your friend that said they didn't want to make one more macaroon because they're just sick of macaroons, right? So my daughter, she'd probably kill me for talking about her, but my daughter makes the most delicious cupcakes you ever had in your whole life. I mean, she has one that she calls the Father's Day cupcake that has an entire Reese's peanut butter cup in the bottom. I'll just let it go at that. I mean, it's just so good. Everything she makes is delicious. And years ago, it's been, I think it was 10 years already, she started a business and was trying to do it. And it just got overwhelming for her. The demand was so high. She wasn't charging enough because, again, you get your self-worth tied up in it and you say, who's going to pay $5 for a cupcake, which people will do all day long if they're good.
They're like 14 bucks a pop.
Right, exactly. Some of them are that much.
Yeah, sure.
And so she just stopped. She just said, I'm not doing this. And she stopped. It was a shame because, I mean, she was really being successful at it. Well, fast forward 10 years and she's restarted that business. And again, this is a hobby that she turned into a business, just like you were talking about. But now she has rules. She will only make those desserts that she wants to make and only in small batches. So she makes these little dessert boxes like this big that have like 2 or 3 things in them for like wedding showers and baby showers and, birthdays. She makes all these cute little things. She doesn't do cake pops. She would throw something at me if I asked her for a cake pop, but she makes like little cobblers and little cupcakes and cookie sandwiches, all kinds of stuff. And people love them. She went to an event that sold out the first time she went. I mean, she just really, like 700 pieces, she sold them all out. So, but the thing is that as a solopreneur, it's on her terms. So it's the same general idea, but tailored back to a way that makes her happy to do the job. Because when it's a hobby that you're converting into a business, you can get really where you hate that hobby. It's no more fun for you, just like the macaroons. So I think that's also an option, that you can find a way to alter the path slightly so that it's still fun for you and isn't as big of a headache.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's, there's been days where I wake up and say, I'm not going to do, like, as an example, in my company, do we do paid advertising? Yes, but it's not this. It's really, I don't hang a shingle out saying we do paid advertising. Do we make websites? We do, but only for customers that we already have existing. I don't go out and search for new website clients. And we'll have 2 or 3 websites in a month going on, but it's not like, oh, I got so many, because it's a lot of work, quite frankly. And it's like, it's like watching paint dry. Because you do something, you have to wait for pieces from the client. And that's usually the tough thing, because people don't realize just how many moving parts there are in a website if you really want to do it well. So yeah, I get it. So I don't advertise for those things, right? And so I do a little bit. I think that's one of those things. It's like you put guardrails up, right? I'm not going to do that.
Well, exactly. And I think that in either option, whether you build a business for yourself, build a business that has employees and whatnot, or you build a job for yourself, either way, it needs to be something that makes you feel good. Because part of the whole deal about going into business for yourself is to feel good about getting up and going to work every day, right? You don't want it to be like, oh, I got to go back to work today. I mean, no, we don't want that.
That's all.
So many people have said to me for executive errands, you should add a rental component to that, because property managers who also do rentals make buku bucks. The mere thought of that makes my stomach go into a knot, even just talking about it. Okay. Yes, I am aware that it would be a great revenue stream. It's doable. I have the brains to do it, but the idea of doing it makes me physically ill, and I don't want to do it. And it's not what I set out to build my company to do anyway. There's plenty of good property management companies that rent properties. Let them do that. I would rather do what we're doing. And so you have to honor those feelings so that you don't get sucked into doing something you hate, because it's so easy to do. Have you ever been sucked into something you hate besides like websites? I mean, is there anything else?
I've done that over the past, I've regretted it, and I've tried to tick that box and say, okay, that's a danger zone. I'm going to just say no. And I'll give you a example. I had to say no to you to do something. You needed help with a certain thing, and I said, no, Leslie, that's really not something. That's really not something that I want to take on. I'm probably not. I appreciate the offer, but I'm probably not your best source for that.
I remember
And
that.
and so I turned you on to somebody else, and that's worked out well, because it was like, do I have the bandwidth to do it? Yes. Do I have all the knowledge it takes to really 100% be successful at the end of the day? I wasn't confident, and our friendship was worth more than that. And I didn't want to be coming back and say, Jeff, you said you could do all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I was kind of learning along the way. I don't want to do that.
And I only cry a little bit every day that you didn't help me.
She still sends me emails and attaches that, and so I'm like, I'm still about chest deep in the knowledge of it. But anyway, so today, let's wrap up. So today we've been talking about being a business owner, and really, have you built a business, or have you built yourself a new job? And I think the key prepositions you gave are
in or on.
In or on. And if you're an in, you're probably a job. And if you're on, you're probably a business owner, because you're always working on the business. I'm just saying, if that's all you're doing, you're 100% in.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You're definitely got a job. And again, it's not bad. If you're in and out, or in and on, you're probably in that, as you say, middle ground. And you could be like myself, a hybrid. And then when you get to the point where you're almost always on, that sounds funny. Leslie's always on, right? She is
I try to be always on.
Yeah, she's a pure business owner. And we think about that only being mega companies, and it's not true. It can be, one person, especially now, one person, and everything is done with automation and artificial intelligence, but they're not doing anything. They're working on the business. It could be that way. So keep that in mind. I hope you've taken some good notes. Leslie, any last thoughts before we let them go? Because I'm starting to get bent, twisted, and exhausted.
Oh my goodness sakes. You're so easy. Totally easy. I was just going to say only that one of the points that Dan always made as being a one bucket guy is that he had 4 kids and then 5 kids pretty young. And he liked to take them camping and motorcycle riding and all of that stuff. So by only working for himself, or having himself to be responsible for, he was able to take all that time and do that and spend those formative years with his children, which was really important to him. And he made good money. He could have made 10 times the money if he would have brought in people to help him. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that you have to decide how much is enough for you. How much is enough? Because it's really easy to just keep going and going and going and going. And you can get so wrapped up that you lose sight of what your objective is. So just really do some evaluation. If you need help, there's people like me and like Jeff that can help you. We certainly are willing to counsel and coach people all the time. So we're available.
Cool. Well, as always, Leslie, it's a treat speaking with you on the Bent, Twisted, and Exhausted Entrepreneur podcast. If you're new to this, first of all, thank you for joining us. And we're on Spotify and all the other places, YouTube as well. And if you're listening to us on Spotify and you say, I didn't realize they had a video portion of that. That's on the YouTube channel. So you can go to Leslie or Jeff Harrison and you can click on that. We'd love to have you. If you have any questions, we'd love to see it in the comments. We check those and we'd love to have your input and thoughts. And in the meantime, I'm going to have a great time because I feel a little less bent, twisted, and exhausted now.
Oh, yay.
By
the way, my last name is not Harrison. He said Leslie and or Jeff Harrison. I'm Leslie Spoor. So I just want to clarify that, right. My husband will not be happy if he thinks it's Harrison. So no.
Yeah, I knew what I meant. But I'm glad you clarified that. So Leslie, thank you so much. Until next time, make sure that are you working on, are you working in the business? And then just have fun doing whatever it is you do. I'm Jeff.
Absolutely. I'm Leslie.
We're out.
Bye.